Hi, I'm James from GS Science, and today we're going to look at a research paper that I did. In this research paper, we tried to get an insight into the technique of elite kettlebell sport athletes. We documented their trajectory when they performed the kettlebell snatch exercise, or I should say we documented the kettlebell's trajectory. So here's a publication that we had from this research, and here's everyone that contributed. You might like to take a closer read of that. We basically used infrared cameras sampling at 250 times a second. They documented the trajectory of two markers we placed on the kettlebell handles. So we're quite lucky in that we got to recruit 4 ex or current world champions. And we looked at the variability of their trajectory and the differences in certain points. So we had 4 points that we paid close attention to, which was fixation, of course, midpoint on the downwards phase, end of the backswing, midpoint on the upwards phase. So again, we looked at the variability in these 4 points, and we particularly looked at the differences between the midpoints. So was the trajectory further forward, further back, to the side, between the upwards phase and the downwards phase. Here we have a side-on view. So this is a view a coach might see an athlete with. So you can see all the lifters follow a sort of C shape here. Lifters A and D have a flat top at the top. With that sort of indicates that they perform their hand insertion phase with a pronated grip, whilst lifters B and C got a bit more of a tapered edge, so they might have more of a neutral grip when they're moving through that hand insertion phase there. It's quite interesting. Now it's worth pointing out that lifter B and D here actually have distinct gaps between their upwards phase and their downwards phase. So the tighter arc is actually the downwards phase, the larger arc is the upwards phase. Now we've got a lot of numbers here, but basically the numbers up here are just the variability in millimeters. So, with the D under 20 mil, so less than 2 centimeters, the other's 23. So about 2 centimeters difference, which is not a whole lot. You probably couldn't perceive that. Lifter A actually had an 8 mil difference, so that's very, very low. Or they're all quite low. Now, down here, so we've got the differences between the midpoints. So lifter A over here, about 5 centimeters between the upwards phase and the downwards phase. So again, the downwards phase on a tighter arc. Lifter B here, almost 8 centimeters. Lifter C, about 5 again. And lifter D's got almost 9 centimeters difference, or 90 mil. And also has a difference in the vertical plane, which is not so evident in C and A. Lifter B also had quite a large difference there. Now we've got the front-on view. So this is probably the most important view with respect to judging. And it's worth pointing out, lifter A is using sort of that medial lateral, moving out to the side a bit more. Lift D is sort of, lifter D and C, pretty tight on the way up there. Okay, so they've all got the lowest variability here in that overhead position. So that's quite interesting. So again, this makes sense because this is what the judges see. So making it really tight. But lifter A actually had a 70 mil difference between the midpoint of the upwards phase and downwards phase. So there's a 70 mil difference there, so they're moving out to the side a bit and coming back in on a tighter arc. Whereas in contrast, lifter D only had a 14 mil difference. Here we've got the speed of the movement, and basically all lifters except for lifter A had a faster upwards phase than downwards phase. And I guess it's all to do with how tall you are and your strategy or your pace. So if you're going at a faster pace, you would have potentially a faster downwards phase. However, slower pace, if you really, with your drop phase, if you really deload, take your time with it, it's going to be much slower than your upwards phase, of course. But if you're trying to go 20 plus RPM, it can be hard, although some people can do it, of course, with that deload. So basically, take home things from here. The trajectory of the kettlebell should follow a C shape. There's two different C's. There's a tighter arc on the downwards phase, a larger arc on the upwards phase. Particularly in fixation, and we didn't look into all the numbers here, so you can have a closer look at the paper, but if you look at the vertical movement variability in fixation, it's very, very low. So it just really indicates that you really need to be consistent with your lockouts. And we'll go into some more videos where we talk about the forces involved and other movement variability things. These guys were relatively fresh, but of course, when you're doing 10 minutes, you might move to like a survival technique type thing. Okay, hope that helps. Cheers.